The the idea of today's talk is going to be, as one historian put it, talking about the Middle Ages and not talking about Christianity is like talking about Hamlet and not mentioning the Prince of Denmark. It can't be done because medieval Europe is so saturated with Christianity, and much of what has remained of Christian civilization comes from the period. It seems odd when you think of all the choices that people had religiously speaking. I mean, it's like, what do they call it now in computer world? A menu of religions and philosophies that might have come out, and Christianity prevails and then exerts itself. Does this mean everyone's Christian? I seriously doubt it. But nominally speaking, it is more or less the only game in town. So if you say, well, I'm got this other choice B, choice C, I would think again. So Christianity then, first of all, comes to the Roman Empire because obviously the medieval world doesn't exist. So let's see how it's going to affect Western medieval Europe. Obviously, the primary source of scholarship, in fact, I would even go so far as say only source, because it will be in many ways a society that is entirely dependent on the church for much of what will later come to be private, state, what have you. But how many centuries did this church bring about all the writing, all the preservation of its ethos, I guess you would call it. It's more or less standard for its existence. And it would explain, of course, what people should believe and whether or not they did. This was the official acceptance. Institutionally speaking, everyone had to be more or less in tune with the Christian faith, whether you are kings or any other leaders. It's not like we have any alternatives. Some of you may be aware, of course, there will always be Jewish communities. They're not necessarily well accepted, but they're there. And so they are sort of like a minority that have their ups and downs. I note them so that you are aware that they are there, but they are such a small minority that only later centuries will they become a factor when this becomes overwhelmingly Christian to the point of coming down on others. I found this map and I note it to you because you get the size of the empire, and then you'll see these smaller lines, and they will show you the journeys of missionaries, because clearly Christianity, like Islam, like Buddhism, is a missionary-based religion. But you'll see it doesn't spread in every part of the Roman Empire. Part of that will have to do with the fact that areas where the population is more dense, perhaps more educated, for whatever reason, will be primarily in the East. So that's not really the area we are studying, but it's still important to be aware. This area, which will eventually become the Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Christians, will, of course, be well known to many through the readings of Paul's letters to the various churches in the first century, which is very, very significant. But I did think it's interesting. So you see Mare, you see the Mediterranean, and all these areas, and you see, as they would say in the South, bless their hearts, there's some missionaries who do go west, but they're few and far between in comparison with what you see there. If you could see that, the orange lines in the areas that I guess today would be called Turkey, Greece, and that would be less directly European. That will be changed, of course, with the passage of time. And how do you like my friend there? She's a honey. And you're thinking, who is she? Well, she's what I call ISIS goes Roman. Yeah. And this is syncretism. This is the idea of, you call her Isis, but we call her Juno, and she's beautiful. And who knows, she can be whatever you need her to be. She's there for you, and she's got her fancy schmancy outfit. The idea, of course, being that we do have this huge menu of religious options, if I can talk that way, because they know, like, you got to be a this, you got to be a that. We'll talk about the mandatory in just a moment, but traditional gods are essentially there for the offering, and they provide a great economic opportunity. I mean, if you want to go in priest or priestess, and the economic costs are huge. I mean, and then of course they've got a good payroll, benefits, Jupiter. Just go to, you remember Edith Hamilton's mythology, so many of us? Yes, of course, who could forget? And you think, all those gods, you got to have a large staff to maintain it. So you pay your benefits, and then you think religious bureaucracies and think, well, you can work 2 or 3. I don't think so, because you got a lot to do. Juno business is busy. June, we get that. Yeah. All of the gods, Mars, Venus. Yeah, I mean, basically, these people maintain them either as priests, whatever they need. And I always like to remind people, it's not like you're asking the god to help you with your issues. The gods are not there. The gods are there for you to offer them some goodies, and then they'll thank you. And the clergy will, the priests, priestesses, whatever they are, they will like you too. So this can all be applied. And so I'm thinking when Caesar Augustus, Octavian, when he took over Egypt, that they had no problem. He just said, oh yeah, that's one of ours. And that may have been a surprise for the Egyptians, but hey, we just want to cooperate as much as we can. So this is part of the issue of like working that in. Vestal virgins will ring a bell to some of you. Remember them? I was glad to find out they were not like nuns, because you don't get tenure. You basically you serve a term. Yeah, you serve a term, and then I guess when you hit the old 3-0 or something, you know, you get a nice gold pen, and and they can wedding bells can ring. Yeah, it's like, but during that time, no dating. So more or less, when then these Vestal virgins and others maintain what we would call the local religions, like Vesta's the goddess of the hearth. So it sounds like domesticity, doesn't it? Very Roman tradition. And you say, what? More bureaucrats? Yes, I'm telling you. They are just like Kudzu. They grow and grow. I mean, it's not like we have enough priests, thanks anyway. But have you ever heard a bureaucracy saying we have enough? Never. More and more assistants, associates, whatever it may be. So all of these local gods, imperial gods, and there could be promotions or transfers, or I'm just emphasizing what I think Frank was getting at. It's like this whole religious complex is very huge and very important when you're trying to run an empire. I mean, we've got the military, but we've got civilian interests too. And of course, how is it maintained? Well, partially government subsidies, but I'm thinking we have to have some wealthy donors too. That's what I was speaking to earlier about giving to Auburn. Yes, we try to give, and this is what people are doing. Give to Vesta. She loves you very much. And I won't say it's a write-off, but the gods can't help but love you more. Imperial worship, the idea of the emperor as God, where did that come from? I think pretty early on in Octavian's time. I mean, he couldn't bring it up except when he got to Egypt, because they would say, I guess they waited for Cleopatra to die, and then they would say, oh, you're a god, we love you so much. He would say, oh, shucks, all right, I'll be your God, but don't tell anybody else. That's a no-no. Now, I need to go back to Italy. I've got some things I need to take care of. But if you want to call me God, it's okay. And you can kiss my feet, whatever you need to do, that you'll be more covered. But basically, the emperors after Augustus were not shy. There was just one proviso. You gotta die. Yeah, bummer. But because as long as you're alive, you know what you are? God to be. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. And so everybody's like, oh, you're a God in training. It's like future God of the world. It's like that. But every emperor, and it will not be, I think, probably until the 3rd century that they'll come out and say, I'm already a God. Don't you all agree? And everything? Yeah, you're a God. God, you're wonderful. Yeah. I mean, no, who's going to say, no, you can't be? Check out your death certificate. But no, it's like nobody's going to say that. They will basically assume he is a God. How serious is it? It's like paying your taxes. It's like, I don't like to do that. Yeah, but you do it. You better, or I'll report you. It's more or less to understand that imperial worship, as far as I'm aware, nobody's going to like, oh, emperor, I love you, and holding on and you cry. No, I think it's pretty much emotionless. ritualistic, but it's expected. Oh, yeah. I mean, and think about the immensity of the Roman Empire. So you got to have everywhere that they can do their little ceremonies, and there are diverse people, if you want to get down to that level. To understand, of course, that all these people, and it's just a way of saying, I'm a believer and who maintains imperial worship? Bureaucrats, yes. More staffing needs. We understand that. I call them mystery religions because they're not mysteries like a series on HBO or Showtime, but a mystery in the sense of a sort of cult. Oh, in the day, that was such a bad word, wasn't it? When they would talk about cults and all of that. In this case, I think what we're talking about, in much like a fraternity or sorority, it's like you have some particular secret amongst the members. And so they share in this. And the quote unquote mystery has to do with the god or goddess. And everyone in the group shares it. And this can bring great excitement to people. So much of these mystery cults were destroyed by the Christians when they took over, because you won't be needing this anymore, you losers, because we win, you lose. So, do you need any more of your materials? No. There won't be any more services. So, it is amazing what must have been going on, but you got to figure they probably had rituals and services, and they had clergy of sorts. And of course, the Christians will claim all kinds of bad things. Animals and blood, and maybe even necrophilia. I don't know. I can't prove any of this. I'm just saying these mystery religions seem to have drawn quite a bit of people because people are looking for answers and they're not getting it from other sources. Answers like eternal life, and I'll love this God and this God will love me. The two most famous examples are what I like to call foreign imports. They're not Roman gods. But did people believe they were the only God? Well, let's just say they were the big God. And for those of us who were part of the mystery cults, and how would you know if you wanted to affiliate with another chapter if you moved? I mean, if you went somewhere else, how would they know you were one? Oh, and I figured that out. Secret handshake. Or maybe a kiss. Yeah, and people say, oh, I didn't know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and people would go, yeah, you're one of us. Oh, sis, I think I love you. Yeah, I mean, it's like I have come up with all kinds of ideas about how these must have worked, because you could get transferred to different parts of the empire. You don't know. And then you go to these meetings, and I don't think they're open. It's not like come one, come all. I mean, it's like we want to attract, people who may be interested, like I think what they call it, the inquirers class in some churches. So that's the kind of idea. People say, yeah, I've heard there's some ISIS lovers around here. You might not even be able to say that. You don't want to be too conspicuous, but then said, well, what of it? Well, I was wondering if anybody knew about any meetings. And then said, maybe. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like the government is not exactly happy about this, but they go, you people are just so disgusting, but if you want to do this, you can do it. So it's not praised because you realize this is sort of secretive. And if you are a cult member, you are going to inherit eternal life. And during your lifetime, you'll be loved by either Isis, the mother, or Mithras, who was thought to be the son of God, Ahura Mazda, over in the Persian Empire. So you've got a lot going for you. So you think, well, I don't know, how long do I want to be active, or do I have to go to all the chapter meetings, or in life? You better get serious, because we don't want to have to expel you or even damn you. Yeah. Oh, harsh. Oh, gosh. You mean I can't come to meetings anymore? Heck no. Because you're a loser. So all of this, as I say, is so interesting, but so much of it was destroyed by Christians. We don't know a lot about it, but it did have support, and they did establish new chapters. Could you imagine, like representatives going to different places in the empire, and they start having their first meeting? I don't want to call it rush exactly, but they would have it. We're here. We love ISIS. Do you know any people who might also love ISIS? And they say, yeah. You want to get together? Yeah. And it's like, it's all kind of sub rosa, which makes it exciting to me. But yeah, because this has not the approval of the approved by the Roman government, because these people are coming not officially. Could you imagine crossing over into Britain and you were an agent, an ISIS agent? You don't think, then you're going to some big party on a ship and saying, hi, y'all want to talk about ISIS, the mother? She loves you a lot. Maybe you do it back in your room, but not in public, because you're not approved. So, yeah, but that's how these things spread. It's kind of interesting. And I note that because they will be in direct competition in a way with the Christians. We do understand that. Finally, the philosophies, and obviously philosophies are not religions, but they do have their support among the elite. I say, if you're not among the elite, I don't think you could use a philosophy very well. I mean, it's nice to have a philosophy like Stoicism and Epicureanism, but more or less, you follow a philosophy like the Stoics, they're not going to say, we can make every day bright for you. When you die, we're going to some great times are ahead for you. None of that. And I always say, going to a philosophy club meeting can be very difficult. You'll need a lot of coffee and folks arguing and fussing and that kind of thing. So that's what they're, and they're happy with it. I mean, it's not like they love it, but they do drink a lot of coffee at those things. And you can't get it all in Cliff Notes either. I mean, a lot of this. And again, you might have other social interests, and so you may not want to get in that philosophy club. But Lord, they like to talk, and they settle nothing. Okay, I want that to be clearly understood. It's not as if they're going to come to any conclusions, and everybody can leave the meeting and said, Whew, glad we got that settled. And no decaf either. This is all very serious. Very, very serious. Neoplatonism is, as you would figure, mainly they are coming up with understanding what the nature of reality is as opposed to what we see. And so reality versus appearance, many, many cups of very black coffee, no cream, no sugar. All of this Stoicism, they will have their followers, but obviously, if you are amongst the majority of people in the empire who are peasants, who work for a living, are probably not philosophically oriented, shall we say, and do not have the greatest hits of Marcus Aurelius or any of the other great philosophers of Stoicism or any other, which I think is interesting, although philosophies by the Romans, who of course were aping the Greeks, no, nothing wrong with that, but it's just to understand that it's going to have a minority following because most people are just not up for it. I mean, how many people take philosophy? We hope many do when they're in school. Yeah. Montevallo, I bet they have a nice philosophy department. We have one too. So if you're ever in Haley Center, you stop by and visit them, tell them I sent you, and they'll be mighty pleased. Just say Aristotle and watch what happens. Get in there. That will excite them. It's like you rockers and Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. It just turns them on. Now, let's go back to the Jews. And I want to mention from the get-go, Jews, Greeks, and Palestine. You think, that seems like an odd combination. Well, not really. When you think about how did the Greeks get into Palestine? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Yes, boy wonder, Alexander the Great. All about him. That's right. The Hellenization of the Middle East is a very, very important area because, and I'll just say this as briefly as I can, thanks to Alexander the Great, this area in later times will be acquired by the Romans. Now, obviously, if it were a different class, I would be talking about this in depth. But I'll just note that the Greeks come in to this area thanks to Alexander's conquest. And then from there, the Romans in the later Republic will acquire this area. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Jews of Palestine are happy about it, but I'm sure they might have had some reservations about the Hellenistic rulers, that is, the successors of Alexander the Great. I'm not sure that Jews were happy about any rulers because I was reading, you'd call it like top 10, who were the most difficult people for the Romans to rule? Because you're talking about last time, the Pax Romana. And I'm telling you, those folks in Palestine really caught up. Okay, they had some serious discipline issues, as we say in education, because they were not like, oh, we just want to behave and suck up to you Romans. Sometimes they could be troubling, very troubling. And we know about this. Forgot C there. You see that said Dead Sea Scrolls. It should be C. Dead Sea Scrolls. Those are fascinating writings. Many of you have heard about. They were discovered by Palestinians after World War II, I think about 47. And those writings have fascinated scholars ever since as to what they tell us about the culture of the Jews at the time of Jesus Christ, because it was not a happy relationship. It wasn't the era of good feelings, as they would say about Latin America. It wasn't good at all. Of course, there were sycophants, which we say kiss-ups, among Jewish leaders. There always are. We know that. But by and large, there was much rebellion against the authority of the Romans. The meant that, as we would say today, there would be tremendous Roman resources spent in putting them down. I was thinking about what period, and we associate this period with none other than Nero and other emperors of that day and age. In other words, later in the first century and into the second century, and you're thinking, you mean they have to deal with that in the Pax Romana? Huge hell. And a lot of people became very important because of it. You know, it's like MVP because they were stars. Emperors, Vespasian, Titus. All of this is to say that the issue of Palestine is very, very significant. And there is even, shall I note, messianic talk, that is to say that we are God's people. This is Jews, of course. We are God's people, and God now in our time of our latest time of oppression, because we've been oppressed before by Lord knows who, Egyptians and all Babylonians and all the rest. But now it's the Romans, and God is going to save us. And these ideas, which come out in some parts of Dead Sea Scrolls, and is supposedly connected to the figure you may have heard of called Barabbas, who was supposedly going to be this sort of symbol of the Jewish rebellion against Roman authority. However that may be, that leads me clearly into the shared beliefs, which is not surprising considering Jesus was Jewish. The ideas that I thought were most important were the covenant, the Messiah, and the Passover, because I wasn't trying to twist these ideas, but just apply them to both religions. And those of you who are familiar with Paul's writings will know about his speaking of in Galatians about the special relationship of God and his people, but a people no longer based on the law, but based on faith. The Savior and the Messianic idea, you can go back in the book of Isaiah and other prophets to come up with that. And finally, the idea of the atonement as being with the, remember the Passover and the sacrifice of the animals, and of course, the Last Supper. I didn't try to force any of these comparisons, but I think they are too obvious not to note that if you had been Jewish and perhaps interested in this particular religious change, this might have had great appeal to you. Because again, these Christians were quite evangelical. While they would not have been popular among other Jewish people, I would dare say, I mean, because they are a breakaway group, what would you say, sectarians perhaps? It's obvious that there was some support even as early as the 1st century after Christ. Now, of course, the big man here is Saul of Tarsus. Now, I don't know how many of you have been to Tarsus. It is, I know, but it is a Turkey city now. And, but for those of us who are interested in ancient history, Roman history, it'll always be Tarsus. And the reason for that, of course, is Paul, St. Paul. Because I thought, what's the significance of Tarsus? I mean, what's a guy from Tarsus doing in the religion of Palestine? Well, A, he's Jewish. B, he's a rabbi, which means he's highly educated. And C, he's Hellenistic. Ooh. Now, what does that mean? Well, that just means he's got that Greek thing going. He's Jewish. He's got Greek connections. And he's a Roman citizen. Roman citizenry was then more, shall we say, special. Eventually, it'll be granted to everyone during the 2nd century. But at this point, during the life of St. Paul, and you notice he died in 67, we think, he was, according to the accounts in the New Testament, someone who ended up in Palestine, and he did so at first as a devout rabbi and rabid supporter of Judaism before his conversion. Here I tried to simply list the major accomplishments that give him the right to being called the second founder. Again, if you have read the Acts of the Apostles, then you will know all this. And because I have the map, but I think it's very interesting, from the medieval perspective, look where it's going and where it's not going. We make it to Italy, and you think, well, can't we go further west? Well, maybe we can, but not yet. So what are those folks going to do out there? Well, ISIS, you got various gods. I mean, it's not like there are not some other gods and goddesses available. Options, I guess. So menu choices, yeah. I don't think that's going to be the problem. But we're concerned, interestingly, I think, with the area that you see here and with the various red spots. See Malta there and areas. See Sicily. Many of you have been to these places. There's Naples up there, and you're thinking, what's going on? Well, of course, the development of Christian communities. How is this dealt with by the Roman government? Not well, but as long as it's kind of small and you don't push it, kind of like another mystery cult. It's not something we approve of, but we're not going to do anything about it. More of that in just a moment. But Paul's letters, which of course are quite readable in many translations, we'll talk to people about how to maintain their belief system and stay together against those who would divide them. And you can understand it was a very, very difficult business. I think of Ephesus, Ephesians, and Corinthians, and all the rest, Galatians. And all of them developing of church doctrine. And of course, Paul does not necessarily like the Pope. I mean, he is expressing his opinions. Now, as Christians have gone forward over the centuries, it's like, well, Paul says this, Paul says that. Fine. But I just want you to know that's his point of view, but that's the one that was accepted, presumably. Whereas, folks have other points of view, but that was the one that prevailed. Sometimes people wonder what these Christian churches, and remember, they are a minority big time. They're not public. They're like a mystery cult. They have meetings, and if you just want to inquire, there are no requirements. You don't have to tithe because you're not a member yet. You're not in. So you may come to that get together, and then they'll say, well, we were really glad to have you, sister, and it's time for you to leave. You're not one of us. You got any questions? I didn't think so. So you just head on out and said, yeah, well, I'm going to ISIS and see what they think. They'll want me, because their dues are a lot lower than yours. I mean, it's like, I don't know about that, but it is true, though, that they did have these parts of the meeting that they would welcome people. They would have sacraments. And again, it was overwhelmingly urban. I always think it's interesting to think about the origin of the word pagans, because it isn't nice to call you're a pagan. And that could be hurtful. But basically, pagans just mean rural folks. So it's like, they're just, you say, we got a Christian thing going on in our city, we're urban, we're sort of city types. And so we're Christian. And they go like, we got the old gods because we're rural. So we understand that difference. Remember that old song, Give Me the Old Time Religion? Yeah. So that's the idea about those pagans. Yeah, don't give me any of them new gods of yours. Want the old ones. So one of the interesting parts of Christianity, and this seems to be pretty early on, although, again, everything about early Christianity is highly debatable, is the idea of this organization of having the bishop and the priest. You can call it, for those of you Presbyterians or other, a Presbyterian elders, because I gather sometimes those terms of bishop and priest smacks of popery. So if you want to go with the Calvin touch, then We can just do presbyters, it doesn't matter. But the idea of having that group and the organization and the community, so that's got to be highly important. Because remember, it's great if you want to be a Christian, but that doesn't mean that you can just go around and say, I'm a Christian, so don't mess with me. It's like you're basically kind of sub rosa. It's like you can do it, but do it at your own risk. Yeah, because there could be problems. However, look at number 3, strong moral certainties. And that can go with number 4 too, because as opposed to the world since the Enlightenment, it's these folks, one of sins, had no doubt about the truth that they were pursuing. So it's not like, well, gee, let's all just take a course in comparative religion and philosophy and say, and say, well, this is kind of good. This is kind of good. I don't think so. No. The idea of the certainties and zeal and the belief in the imminent second coming. And again, that's very, very important, because some of you may remember when Paul spoke about if he doesn't work, let him not eat. Because people are saying, you know what? I think I'm going to take early retirement. And you say, really? Well, yeah. I mean, the world's coming to an end real soon. So I'll just pick up my checks. I'm out of here. Yeah, and you're thinking, how many murder mysteries can you watch? I mean, it's like you need to get off your behind and do something. But and they had deposits, some of them, because they tried to pull that. Because sometimes people are lazy. I know you're shocked, but yeah, nobody here. But I'm just saying there are these people we know about that are like that. So yeah, but I just thought of another song. Work for the night is coming. Yes. Remember that one? Yeah. I mean, that is the idea. Yeah, I got all this stuff down. Yes, I really, in terms of application to these particular ideas. Liabilities. Yeah, this is like a business report, assets and liabilities, right? The liabilities I found is like the refusal to participate in emperor worship. It's like, the people in the mystery cults probably went through the motions, but the Christians were sort of like, we're not going to do this. And they were just, I hate to use the word obnoxious, but they just annoyed the Roman officials. And then you say, what about their Jewish colleagues? That was different. The Romans gave the Jews a pass on emperor worship. Isn't that wild? But not you Christians. Now you, I know. But you say, Christians, you ought to know better. You Jews, y'all, you've been like this ever since Abraham. We get that. So you get a pass. That's the truth. But you Christians, you newfangled troublemakers. Yeah, so they make that particular difference. If you've ever thought about that, and again, that will apparently cause a problem, because it's not only the Roman officials, but their very neighbors dislike them. And it's like, why would that be? And I think it's just anything different, anything new. I'm thinking, I wonder if they felt that way about mystical people. I'm not sure. Maybe they weren't as out and open about their particular belief, but the Christians had no problem about their sense of being the people. And we find that in many cases from examples of people who were in, I guess you would say, one was Christian and the other was not. I can't imagine a marriage like that, but because, of course, you're like, I love you, honey, but you know you're going to hell. So see you tomorrow morning, I hope. I mean, you're thinking, would that be good? Oh, yeah. Can this marriage be saved? There used to be a section in a magazine like that. It's like, it would be a very, very strange idea. Like, could I read to you some passages while we have our dinner? I don't know. People have different ways of functioning, but I can't believe that difference could lead to marital bliss. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that could be very complex, one would think. The idea, I had to quote this to you. I hate long quotations, but this was so interesting. And it's from one of our 5 good emperors, Pax Romana. Yeah, laying on all the cliches. This individual was named Trajan, and he got a letter from one of his provincial governors named Pliny. And Pliny had been more or less, Pliny, Pliny, he was a major figure in the Roman administration. And more or less, he was asking the emperor for advice.
That's the guy that got killed in the Pompeii?
No. But basically, you can see he's been hearing cases of, people will, oh, what do they say now? Rat you out. Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I saw a bunch of them. They go into some kind of secret meeting. Well, thank you for coming in. Sit right down. Yeah, I'm not going to do the whole thing. But I mean, it sounds like something out of the FBI. I know about them. Yeah, comrades. And that's the idea. And of course, Trajan's going to say they are not to be sought out if they are denounced and proved guilty. They're to be punished with the reservation that whoever denies he's a Christian and proves it, that by worshiping our gods, it'll be okay. In other words, you can kind of talk them out of it. Because people are fair weather, kind of. Christian said, even though he was under suspicion, maybe he has a record. Yeah, Rome's most wanted. Yeah, then he shall obtain pardon through repentance. But I'm not as interested in that as I am here. But anonymously posted accusations ought to have no place in any prosecution, for this is both a dangerous kind of precedent and out of keeping with the spirit of our age. Go, Pax Romana. Yes, it's like we do not deal in these innuendos. That's Trajan and Pliny, and it's very famous, that statement. Now, of course, the skeptic will say, how often was this actually done? Talk is cheap or writing is cheap. It's hard to say, but at least we understand on the highest level, and this is very high level, isn't it? There was not an area, because people will like, you don't like your neighbor, they play their mouth music too loud. And so you're saying like, You know, I think it's a bunch of pagans who live over there. I want to get them, you know, in the post office, you know, Auburn's most wanted. Yeah. You can imagine how bad that would be. And then people then say, yeah, thank you for how much you want. Yeah, it's like, yeah, the filth of lucre will attract people. You know how it is. Well, you don't, but there are people of that ilk. The idea then is Trajan, one of 5 good emperors, would post this. And of course, Christianity was going on. Now, did that make Christianity illegal? No. It just means you just can't run around accusing people of it unless you've got proof. I mean, you know, and then if you try to use the wrong evidence against them, and they say, no, man, I don't know anything about this Christianity stuff. I love my gods. Yeah. Right. I'm into Mithras big time. Yeah. It's like, all right, keep going. You know, I get all this from one of the shows. Yeah. I mean, it's like you get the idea of how much we get. A liability is also, of course, heresies. You say, a heresy. Indeed. Wherever you get major ideas, you're going to have a philosophy club meeting and somebody coming along after more cups than they needed. I'm going to say, well, you know, that's not quite right. And coffee can sometimes create negativity, nay, hostility, if you have too much. And that's definitely the case for these heresies, because ideas that now, oh, well, heck, we have differences, but all the world is love. Just give me a big hug. I don't think so. You're a blankety blank heretic, and I don't like you. And you are bad. Yeah. The idea of the significance is clearly this world is not one that says anything goes. We are the world, we are the church. It's none of that. Yeah, there is the way, particularly as organization and authority develops. And that's the point I want to make here, because this will be very, very important. If there had not been organization and authority, maybe anything goes and everybody, you know, all the world is made for love. I mean, just give me a hug and whatever you want to believe, you know, it's fine. But all of the idea is, if there's going to be order and authority, there's got to be a systematic teaching. And that's what will be very important, of course, in creating a body that survives in all the changes that are going to come with the Christianization of the Roman Empire. And of course, that new crop of prospective Christians, the Germans, coming to a classroom near you next week. Yes. So, yeah. Oh, and here he is. Yes. Mr. Big Stuff, as the old song was. Constantine. And you may think, Constantinople. Yes. Yes, that's true. And he would be very happy that you remember him, because he is the great. And he may be, for reasons that are uncertain, a determinant in the future of Christianity, because according to those who wrote about him, he became a Christian when he won a famous battle. And that, of course, the Battle of Milvian Bridge, in control of the western part of the Roman Empire, kind of like going into Rome. That's where Milvian Bridge was. And it will be written about, of course, a Christian clergyman on the payroll, I might add, who would write about it's a miracle. God wanted them to win against non-Christian losers. And he realized that the Christian God was the right one. And what followed is called the Edict of Milan, when he was meeting the Eastern Emperor in Milan. And they will have this statement of toleration. The statement of toleration means exactly that. You ISIS people, you can have your fake religion. I don't think he said it that way, but it's more or less, we're not ready to declare the Christians the only religion. So we're going to allow you people. You say, well, does that mean you don't love us anymore? Well, you can just take it the way it's said and just be thankful you're being tolerated. Ultimately, Constantine will become the only religion. And you say this was just begging, and it takes some time, 324, before he takes down the other emperor. It's like, this empire is not big enough for both of us. Yeah. It's amusing to me. It's like, first of all, he took down one in the West, and then in the East, he will take down another. And I'm not saying he didn't have problems. He had plenty of them, but he was certainly a great military leader. And of course, during the period between the Edict of Milan and the defeat of the emperor in 324, I think he was probably going to some church services, and people are beginning to get that idea of like, I think he's going to hang out with those Christians a lot. Wonder when does he give equal time to, no Mithra services, no ISIS services. He seems to be biased. And all of this, of course, is going to lead to clear problems. And what are those problems? Well, the very next year, he summons all the bishops, all the church leaders. I think I was reading just the other day about maybe 100 made it. There were probably 300 odd bishops. And you say, oh, isn't this great? This is terribly Greek in design, isn't it? And you think, what's a nice emperor doing in a place like this? That's a very good question. The Council of Nicaea, now in Turkey, of course, was in fact there to debate the issue of whether Christ was truly human or truly God.
Arians allowed.
No, but they were there for the debate, and there was a discussion, and you're thinking, you see him there? He's sitting down. And Lord, I bet you that man was so nervous. Could you imagine how you would feel if you were Constantine and a bunch of theologians? That would be like somebody at a philosophy club who had probably had one too many coffees. And you think, I got to get out of here. How can I do this? Can I say I got to go powder my nose, or I need to leave? Because I'm not doing this. I mean, I'm in the military. I like to kill people. I don't want to sit around with a bunch of theologians and have to debate the nature of the Holy Trinity. That is some pain, serious, capital PAIN. Yeah. But he was there, and you bet they played up to him. They said, oh my gosh, we love God, number one, but you're number two. Oh, love your toe. Could we kiss it? And you're thinking, what are we getting here? I'll tell you exactly what we're getting. We're getting the emperor as head of the church. And he will more or less be a powerful figure there, because bishops are more or less going to be, shall we say, subsidized. And you're going, but I thought they were chosen on the basis of their devotion to the faith and their knowledge of doctrine. Yeah, up to a point. But we expect a certain amount of obedience, submission, because we have invested a lot in these church people. That is Constantine. Have you ever thought about that? Constantine had already invested, and then they get to arguing, fussing about whether Jesus is really God or is a human. And Constantine's going, and I've wasted all this time and resources on these folks. Y'all settle down and stop fussing and understand I want one church or else. And so the people who did not agree with this formulary are going to find themselves expelled. And you know what happens when you're expelled? You are going to hell, damn you. Ooh. Yeah, but that's your own fault. You're a follower of, shall we say, evil. And that's, of course, heresy. But that's the idea. I mean, if you hadn't done that, it could be like, you're that belief and that belief. And Constantine wouldn't put up with all that. So that's a very important point. Some people call this Caesaropapism. I know how you like that. Don't go around calling people that. But a Caesaropapist thinks they're both head of the church and head of the state. And you say, wow, I really love you. I mean, maybe this will be a way you express the adoration of the special person. I don't know. But that is the way that they treated Constantine. In some churches, I think he's actually called a saint. I don't know. I know he made some boo-boos. So yeah, some people got hurt. He had to kill his wife and child. But we all make mistakes. Now let's go to Rubens. Okay. Love the Renaissance Baroque art. This, I believe it's in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But it was painted by the famous Rubens in the Low Countries and done in the 17th century. The painting is that of a famous bishop, St. Ambrose, keeping the emperor of the day out of the church because Theodosius had been guilty of ordering a more or less demolition of a mass of people in a rebellious area called Thessalonica. Obviously, after he apologized and he was accepted. But that, of course, is not what Rubens wants us to understand, nor in the story of this, it's to understand that this is a great power that the church would come to have over rulers. That is, rulers who took it seriously. And obviously, the Emperor Theodosius, and you'll see his date, Constantine died in 337, so this is not a ruler of Constantine's family, but it's not that long after Constantine that Theodosius is the ruler. But Theodosius was very serious about his religious ideas. And unfortunately, for the church, for people, he had something of a temper on him. So, but the painting, if I knew anything about art history, I would talk about it, but I'll just let you enjoy it and think about what a splendid work it was and is. When you see him with his advisors and that look he had to St. Ambrose, one of the great leaders of the early developing church, there in what was essentially that sort of go between the East and the West, if you know where Milan is. And you understand, I guess you'd say, the strategic risk that Ambrose took by doing this. Because what if Theodosius had a little temper tantrum? Yeah, I mean, it's very, very important for the future of Christianity and its survival. Because remember, Theodosius, after Constantine, is significant because he will, in essence, announce that Christianity is to be the state religion of the Roman Empire. A whole different category. So, up until this time, you've been hanging out with ISIS. Yeah. And you said, yeah, family just loves ISIS. And y'all have been doing your thing. And guess what? Those days are over. You know what you are? Loser. Yeah. Yeah. So don't even come around me with your disgusting ISIS stuff. Yeah. I'm going to expectorate whenever I hear about ISIS. Yeah. That's just very upsetting to those of us who are good people, opposed to you damn people. Gosh. So that gets very hurtful, doesn't it? You bet you it does. We're even going to have a code, Theodosian code. These are legal codes. Always think about legal codes. And like I was saying, you know about speeding codes? Have you ever wondered? That's why I stay in the right lane, people. Some drivers frighten me. Yeah, young type. People you may know. Yes. And they go like, don't they know about what the law is in terms of how about don't care? Okay. And that's what I'm thinking about with the codes. But I'm thinking even so, the codes will become very important because the codes are going to state Christianity is official. And those bishops, they're going to have not only their salary, but they're going to get benefits. I don't know about dental, but they're going to get great benefit, the whole package. Yeah. And all of that. And you say, but what about our friends of the Mithras group? getting no benefits. Your teeth can rot out for all we care. It's like absolutely amazing when you think about that and you think, well, can we just agree to disagree? No. You just get down because you're a loser and you're going down. Okay. So unless you change your ways, and this will all be according to the law, which I think is fascinating. And let me just conclude by this. He wasn't the son, but he was the successor of Theodosius the Great, and he took the name Theodosius II. And that semblance of that Emperor Theodosius II. He looks kind of, I wouldn't mess with him, but he looks kind of mean. And basically, these laws that will be codified and now presumably are, as we like to say, the law of the land. But you're thinking like, I'm sure everybody's rushing to get a copy, and all the local law firms are saying, yeah, you better watch out. But these are the laws that will be now put into effect for the Roman populace. In other words, what you can do legally and what you better not get caught doing, like speeders or other wicked people. And that's why I want you to see this. Now this is from the Theodosian Code, and this is we're getting close to your special time, 476. Yes, you know it well. Yes. And I know you can I can just see the visible excitement that you're thinking. Because, the last Roman emperor in the West. But look at this. Let us believe in the one deity of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. We authorize the followers of this law to assume the title of Catholic Christians. But, as for others, since in our judgment they are foolish madmen, it's not like, just come on out and say it if you really feel that. They are branded with the ignominious name. That could be hurtful. I may have to have counseling. Yeah. Ignominious name. Heretics, and shall not presume to give their conventicles. Is a conventicle a good thing? No.
I don't think so.
No. The name of churches. Don't you dare call it a church. You and your kind, you're ignominious. Yeah. Yeah. They will suffer in the first place the chastisement of divine condemnation. That's not good. And in the second, the punishment of our authority, gold and silver. You're going down, loser. In accordance with the will of heaven, we shall decide to inflict, God and me. We hang out. That's what's happening to you. So the idea is, it's not good to not be part of the group. You get it? Yeah, and that's legally, and you're thinking, I wonder how well are we gonna handle this? I think it's called enforcement, right? I mean, so I'm not sure about that. I mean, this is very legal because people often flaunt the law. We know that. So this, and the Roman Empire is quite large. I'm not sure all about enforcement of people saying, gosh, now we're scared to death. But I think it will have a great effect. Particularly, let's just say you got an uncle who's a bishop or something, and you're going around like, my uncle, the bishop of this area, what are you? And you know how people do. And so it's will help. And it will discourage, shall we say, members of other religious groups. Oh, and if you were a follower, say, yeah, but I love Jupiter and Juno. So what? Loser. I mean, nobody cares about that anymore. Don't you understand? Maybe it was good for your grandparents, but now go to hell. Yeah. And you say, gee, that really hurts. But that's the way it goes. Where we're going next time is to see the Germans and how they will respond to the Christian activities. I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you all very much.